welcome back to another episode of Rail Industry Connected. I'm Dan Clark, and thank you for joining us. On last week's episode, we spoke to BCIMO about some of the challenges that businesses have to overcome to commercialise innovation that will significantly benefit the railways. This week, we speak to a business that aims to revolutionise the train cleaning process by saving a staggering 98% of water and cleaning one carriage every 30 seconds. Orange Train Wash, which has developed an innovative and adaptable solution for train cleaning operations, has priced itself at an average of 78% cheaper than other cleaning solutions with significant sustainability benefits. Today, we speak to Martin Whitbread, the founder and designer of Orange Train Wash, to learn about the story so far and how Orange Train Wash is set to take operations to a new level. Martin, welcome and thank you for being here.
Yeah, thank you, Dan.
So I've given a bit of a brief overview, very brief overview of Orange Train Wash and its capabilities, but please tell us how the concept came about and how you've developed it over time.
Yeah, I was previously, my involvement with the rail industry was I'd invented and built a machine that removed chewing gum, which was taken very kindly for obviously stations and infrastructure. And then I was asked to modify it so that it could remove chewing gum, excuse me, from seats and things. In the old way, it would mean that the customer had to take the seat cover off, send it to laundry, put a new one on. And over a period of time, when you looked down the train, it was quite a patchwork of colours where different parts had faded in the wash and whatever. So I invented a battery-powered one that would go into there and remove a piece of chewing gum in about 4 seconds. But more importantly, it left the seat dry. So we just quickly dab it with a microfiber cloth, and for obvious reasons, you can understand, it didn't have to go off to laundry. The train was immediately ready for service again without the risk of chewing gum and claims being made on the TOC. And I was asked by the engineering director of this particular TOC whether I could make a big one of these to clean the outside of the trains, because this was in October 2018. There was a lot of cold, bad weather. And with conventional train washes, I understood that when it got to 3 degrees or lower, they were actually unable to clean the trains. So you got to the winter period where common sense says we want to clean the trains, and they weren't able to do it because of the risk of the water freezing around the door seals and taking the train out of service. And it's not like a car in a car park, of course, where you just take that one out and put another one in. To move the infrastructure around was very, very complicated. So that's how it, first of all, and it just got my mind thinking, why are we doing what we're doing in the train wash? So you had this very, very expensive, highly engineered civil works to install all the drainage to complete the train wash. And I thought there had to be an easier way. And then with this particular depot had spent over £600 million modernising, bringing it up to date. But the train wash, I felt, was not only in the wrong place, but was nothing could change for 40 or 50 years. It just seemed to be the colours had varied. So I looked at it and came up with the concept of putting a smaller footprint train wash either side of where the train was, rather than try and complicate it by taking the actual vehicle into the wash. Right. So I pursued that. Took me several months. And in the February, I presented that to the TOC, and they were particularly interested because their wish was to be chemical free. They wanted to be carbon neutral, and obviously wanted clean trains. And at the time, it was very difficult to even realise which trains had been in the train wash and which ones hadn't.
Right.
And I believe this was down to the fact that they were still cleaning with cold water. They were adding detergent, traffic film remover, and it just wasn't giving a good service, Dan.
No, and I think that's the difference as well, isn't it? When you're putting all these chemicals onto the trains,
Yeah,
and you're not seeing much of a difference, it's pretty much a negative impact to the environment as a whole, and not really
yeah,
making a difference at all. So,
no.
you know,
Well,
what
also
did
as
you
well,
do differently?
because I was starting from a sort of blank piece of paper, I actually took samples off of the trains to see what the dirt was. And
Mm.
ironically, 40% of the dirt on the trains was actually detergent. So the top was effectively gluing the train to allow dirt, vegetation, and whatever to stick to it. So that was where I started. I thought, well, that can't be right.
No, not at all. And that's obviously going out into the environment as well, isn't it? You know, with
Yeah.
those chemicals on the train as well. So not so good. So yeah, how have you adapted Orange Train Wash to do that differently then?
Well, what I looked at is around about the time a window cleaner that we used suddenly changed to the wash and reach system, and
Mm.
I was working from home as a lot of people were doing in early 19, and I thought that's not very good. That's never going to dry right. Um, so I said to him, I said, you can't leave it like that. And he said, oh yeah, this is deionized water, and it's already had the ions removed, so it wants to collect everything that it touches. And that's what got me thinking as to the new way of looking at it. So, adding in the fact that it seemed to make more sense to have hot water than cold, I designed the system around having cleaning, but also because we wanted to do other things to it, we deionized that water, heated it, sprayed it onto the train from a very short distance, and then I had an air blade either end, depending on the direction that the train was coming in to the wash, that would blow that water into the track where we would collect it and then pump it back into the wash house and take it through a system of filters to clean that water and then totally deionize it and reuse it. And by doing that, we were able to clean at a rate of 100 litres a minute being sprayed onto either side of the train. But we were bringing back 90 litres of that water. So we were actually losing only 10% of the water, but compared to a conventional train wash, that was saving some 5,000 litres, or as we like to say, 98% of the water that was used. But that water went purely down to the drain. So it was a waste of a resource and very expensive for the water coming in and going out.
And obviously, again, from a sustainability point of view, I mean, that's a significant benefit that
Yeah,
obviously any depot operator can report back on. To save that much water is drastic. It's not
yeah.
even a small percentage, is it? It
No,
is a
no,
huge amount. So,
it's enormous. I mean, later we've actually we did a survey at a London depot, and their water in and out and the power to supply their train wash was actually costing them some £330,000 a year. And we took that down to just under £5,000 with our system.
wow.
So it's an enormous difference all the way round. But it, more importantly, I feel now we've adapted and adapted and adapted. And the data system that we have now, we can say what time that train was cleaned, how long it took, how much water we sprayed on the train, how much water we recycled, how much power, and actually give them their carbon saving at that point, so that their report could be on each set, or weekly or monthly or annually, for them to claim their carbon credits back. So it's moved on a great deal from being a simple idea But that
Mm.
data is going to be more and more important because of the talks now with the transition team that cleanliness and safety and timekeeping is the important parts of how the TOC would get their money. So now, believe it or not, it is still recorded on paper and sent in to Network Rail, but now we will have evidential proof and they will see what trains have been done on what time. Previously, um, if there was a complaint about a certain carriage, that would be referred back to the train presentation manager in the depot, who would look for that train and literally handbash it, where they would, rather than put it through the train wash because it was too complicated, because of where the train were and other trains coming in and out, they would use something as in the modern world of a mop and bucket or a broom and scrub physically the train. And a lot of depots have anything between 7 and 15 temporary staff literally hand bashing. But at that time, the Environment Agency realised that that dirt was going to the ground and it was banned in this particular depot. So they had to do something, and that's why I was asked to look at the whole system.
And as you say, from this was a concept from 2018. Over the last 6 years, we've seen significant advancements and
Yeah,
growth and change of perceptions as well in sustainability. And I think, as you say, that actual data element of it is incredibly important because it's gone away from that pen and paper exercise actually into something that is tangible, can be reported directly from the system, can't be manipulated. That is exactly what it is. So you can definitely see the benefits from that point of view. But I
yeah,
think from obviously with those advancements over time over the last 6 years, you've had an idea. What I quite like about the differences that you've made here is actually you've adapted it over time to suit changing needs and requirements.
yeah.
So
I would say
go on.
that that wasn't originally my choice.
Mm,
COVID being a very difficult period, um,
of course.
it was very difficult to get into depots to do any research or any trials. But what it gave us is it enabled me to speak, and all of our manufacturers of parts within our system are UK based. So it enabled me, for example, to fully understand the filtration system and what we
Yeah.
really needed compared to, I'm based down near Portsmouth when we have a lot of chalk in the hills that is in the water. Whereas, of course, up Buxton Way, it's probably clean enough to drink. So we had a lot of different things that we could adapt. And because, like myself, other directors of companies were also working from home, we were really able to look at each individual part to get what we wanted. And of course, I didn't realise about Network Rail then, how they control so much of everything. Understandably, the safety is the critical part, but it's taken years for me to get approvals for it because I didn't comply with a conventional train wash. But I think the idea of going back a few years when we realised that in depot design, they would very often have to put a temporary train wash in. But even that would take 9 months to 18 months to get in, knowing that that would be of no use 2 years later when the works were done. So we really concentrated on how, as we say, we could arrive on a Monday and be cleaning trains on a Friday, rather than the system on the railway where you can only work in certain hours. Ours was a modular system that could be done in 5 days and working.
Which is exactly what a lot of these depot operators need, isn't it? Because, as you
And
say,
that's why
if they've
we're
got to work,
millions of pounds cheaper as well, because we don't have those civils, because we're reusing the water, and because it's outside, we're actually harvesting rainwater. So as we get
mm,
going and we get the information, it will be interesting for us as well to actually see if we are completely neutral with water. And you know, the interest that we've got worldwide. Whereas we want to save water, places like Saudi Arabia, um, California just haven't got any water. So it's even
Mm.
more interesting for them, but you still have to have this cleanliness at a high level.
And I'm presuming you will have seen interest, or another emerging market beyond UK rail will be the Middle East, for example, where, as you say, water saving is incredibly essential.
Yeah, yeah. And we're in negotiations at the moment. We are specified for a major contract that starts. It's started now, but we're looking at that early part of the year. What we've
Brilliant.
suffered with, and other people coming into the industry will probably realise, is that, and understandably, people want to see it and be able to physically, as we say, kick the tyres. So what we've been able to do now is we are going to be installing into GCRE in the
Brilliant.
early part of this year coming, which will allow TOCs from the UK, and we have some 60 TOCs worldwide that literally want to come there to see the innovation before they order. So this has been a problem where we all of our testing has been done outside of a depot because we
Mm.
weren't able to just suddenly rock up and put it anywhere, and the
Of
safety
course.
elements and the compliance is very long winded and very slow. I will say I understand why,
Yeah.
but as I say, this has taken us 6 years to get to this stage where we're now
Mm.
ready to install and demonstrate and be compliant.
And how important has a partnership with someone like, or an organization like GCRE been? I mean, beyond obviously the, as you say, the ability to go in and kick the tires and test it out, how
Yeah,
important has that relationship been?
amazingly, um, I mean, as I said to you earlier, I'd taken on Tom Smith as the CEO of the company, who has
Mm.
radically changed our thinking because obviously understanding the nuances of the rail industry. But with GCRE, they are this global testing center where people will be coming anyway. And I think it suited both of us that they would be able to have innovation that was current and see it in a real working environment without
Yeah,
me having the difficulty of taking rival TOCs into the depot of an existing one. So
of course.
it's worked out very well, and I think they are now quite excited of the worldwide interest and people coming to Wales to see it. So it's worked for both of us, I'm
Absolutely.
sure.
Good. I'm really glad to hear that. As you say, it's taken a lot of time and effort to get to this point, and 6 years is a significant time. And as you say, the safety critical challenges and everything else, which is completely understandable
Yeah,
on the type of environment you're going into. But what are some of those challenges you face that obviously, Tom is now working with you on? And for anyone that's listening with an innovation themselves, what advice would you give to those individuals? Because obviously, as you say, 6 years is a long time. It's been a passion of
yeah,
yours for such a long time. To carry that on is
it
brilliant,
has,
really.
and I've wondered at my own sanity in a lot of those years as well. And my wife has pleaded with me, just go and get a job, Mark. This is not going to happen. So that's probably been my biggest challenge, and anyone that's got a wife at home would agree with that. But I think it's the things now. What Tom has brought is the understanding of power um, in its usage and where the industry is going. So we're now looking at it's a wind turbine, but it's not a wind turbine. It's a spinning unit which will put power into a battery. Because when you look at a depot, I just thought, oh, well, we'll just add that in. There's three phase there. But of course, it's almost at the limit on the control board because the depots are so old and everything's been added and added and added. And when you say, oh, yeah, well, we need three phase to this, if that was 300 meters away, that was a considerable expense. So we're now looking at the way that we've got the motors working and the system working, that we are going to get to the point where we will have our own power. So not necessarily will we have to be onto three-phase power. So not only does that bring it down, but environmentally it makes it much friendlier, because as you said earlier, we can do a train carriage in less than 30 seconds. So even an 8-car set, the machine is not on for a long time, and we can use that time to bring the power that we need. Whereas a conventional train wash will probably run solid for 20, 30 minutes with all the motors and engines. Because
Mm.
of our design, we're almost doing 3 cars a minute. So we reduce that time down that it's in use. Um, but all of the advantages to the talk are that the train is now ready for use as game. But you, it's not trying to put people off that are coming in, but there was a lot of things that I didn't realise, that because we weren't compliant with a train wash, you need a 10-metre runoff. Well,
Mhm.
when you're not covering that train with water, you're actually blowing it off and reusing it. Everyone looked at me and said, "Well, you're not going to comply with that." And there's a soap test which we couldn't comply with because we don't have any chemical in there. So it's
Mm.
been very difficult to get everyone to come on board. As much as the environmental side was very important to me back then, it's snowballed since, and that is where I think now, as I said, when we did our last exhibition in Derby at the Rolling Stock Network show, I came away thinking that we were now a data company that also clean trains. It's gone completely the other way.
You can see that, and obviously, as you say, the compliance issues and all the different nuances between that as well. There's so many factors to consider, isn't there? So it's obviously,
Unbelievable.
as you
And
say, it's
the rail industry, as you will know, Dan, is like no other. I mean,
mm,
we've had to simulate tests that this will be okay in 127 mile an hour winds. Well, even that, as much as you understand it, you've then got to go and put that design into the
of
software
course.
to prove it. So there's always been obstacles. I felt we were going 2 steps forward and 1 back all the time. But what Tom has been able to do is to bring all that together and get to the point now where our installation, I mean, even working with a signalling company now, that we can offer the package that literally, as I love to say, we can go in on a Monday, everything's working on a Friday. And that makes a massive difference for the way that the depot's designed, because normally these wash houses would be anything from 20, 30, 40, 50 meters long. All we require is 5 meters of straight track. So it really has changed the way that they can do it. We can put them in the sidings rather than in an area which would be difficult in the depot. And my ultimate dream, I suppose, is that depots have not got any space. It would be lovely eventually if we could put them at the beginning of a station, for
Mm.
example, like Southampton, where it could really do with one is as it slows down and it's coming in, because it's washed and dried there and then, the customer would always have a perfect train to look at. So there's other things that we're working on as a business to try and see how we can do it. But as I say, it's been hard enough job to get them into a depot. So we're going with that first, but we're looking at that and we're in discussions with Network Rail as to how that could be.
Which is incredibly exciting. And I think, as I say, the lessons to take from that really is one, stick with it, even from a compliance perspective, because you will get there in the end. And
Yeah.
two, keep innovating and adapting, because obviously changing needs and wants. I love the idea of having a wash just outside the station, so that as it rolls in, I mean, how handy would that be? And it's also thinking a bit differently, that not
Yeah.
everything has to be done at a depot level as well. So
No.
no,
And
that's
the other
incredibly
thing
exciting.
was that in the particular depot I was working with, if for any reason, there was a problem with the wash, or a train hadn't been moved somewhere, very often that had to do a journey of some 40 miles to effectively turn the train round to bring it back to where you wanted it to be. Um, and then when you take away the fact that the time it required to do it and move them, the idea of having a train wash where you want it made more sense. But 6 years is a long time to get that to be accepted. I understand that. And as you can imagine, we're all really excited now because we're at that point.
And a huge congratulations to get to that point as well. So, what obviously aside from obviously the opportunities for GCRE and the Middle East, what does the future of Orange Train Wash look like going forward in the next few years?
We've as I said to you, we've got a lot of talks that want to come and see it. Um, it makes sense. One of the other things that you has been a problem is getting through procurement,
Mm.
because they like to get more than one price for something, and we've got the patent on it, and it's our machine. But it's meant that we can look um, much harder at what we're actually going to do. And as I say, it is exciting, but it's been very difficult. But when we come into a Tox depot now, we can do a business case and show the carbon savings, by doing our own survey and proving that. So when you've got a depot that if you save them tens of thousands of pounds a month, it's very difficult for procurement to push that. And with the procurement laws changed last month now, where
Mm.
it's not just the cheapest price anymore, but you have to
Yes.
hit the SDGs, the targets, all trying to get to net zero. Not only are we much better value, but we hit all of those things for them as well. So
And you can prove that.
we can prove it. We have the evidence to prove it. We're now our software manufacturer is actually adding in pictures so that we can see that at that level, so that they can actually prove it rather than just say they've done it.
Love that. Brilliant. And so, if anyone is interested, how can they find out more? Where do they need to go?
Yep, we're just about to redo our website, which is the orangetrainwash.com. Obviously, we've updated it over the years, but certain parts of it we've kept back because we've been adding things into it. And that will be relaunched in January. Everyone can do it. You can request for us to call you to look at your depot now. Um, but I think the main difference is the fact that the data will really help the TOC, which have not
Mm.
had before, or to be honest, they haven't wanted to put the evidence as it was to the government because it wasn't favourable. Whereas now we can prove it by the simple things of no chemical, a smaller footprint, total recycling of all of the water. Um, we hope that, as I say, by harvesting the rainwater, we'll have even better figures. But because we've got hot water, we're going to lose some through evaporation. But the whole thing is now geared towards that depot being carbon neutral.
That was Martin Whitbread from the Orange Train Wash. Um, I thought that was a really candid and honest discussion about the struggles that Martin and the team have faced over the last 6 years. We work in one of the most safety critical environments in the world, so you can understand the challenges that companies developing something new like this will face. I felt Martin was open about his need to adapt and meet all the specific requirements to get it past that compliance stage, and how he's bringing that in, bringing in the right people has helped Orange Train Wash get to where it needs to be today. His his story shows that with the right mentality, the right approach, and with a huge degree of determination, that there's opportunities to innovate in such a regulated industry. Using organisations like GCRE, like Martin has, or BCIMO, who we spoke to last week, are really essential in driving innovation in the rail industry forward. Martin, thank you very much for joining us, and thank you so much for sharing your story. And thank you for joining us for another episode of Rail Industry Connected. You can view past and future episodes of Rail Industry Connected on YouTube, or listen to them on your way into work on Spotify. And of course, you can connect with other rail businesses and the industry on railindustryconnect.co.uk. Thank you for joining, and I'll see you next time.